Another episode of The Bad Batch is out, and it's everything we could have hoped for. Per usual, there will be spoilers for the episode in this video, so if you haven't seen the episode yet, go do so. That's an order, trooper. This week's Bad Batch episode showed us the start of something we all knew was coming, the replacement of clones with recruited human soldiers. Dark days await the Kaminoan clone masters, and it's not going to be fun for the clones either. As part of the beginning of this paradigm shift, we saw the first squad of recruited stormtroopers put under the command of a clone, namely Crosshair. This was how the changing of the guard began. Clones were first shunted into officer roles, and then into training gigs, and then into retirement. The clones hated every moment of it. Most of them despised the new recruits and hated that they were being replaced by them even more. In this video, we're going to talk about why.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Just today, I witnessed a new recruit hit his head on a blast door during maneuvers. Blasted idiots. What a disgrace to the heritage and legacy of a once truly incredible fighting force. So spoke Commander Cody about a batch of new stormtrooper recruits he was training on Kamino. Though this quote is from Legends, it does do a good job of detailing how the clones saw their successes in both Legends and in canon. Cody, in Legends, was one of many senior clone officers that was tasked with training new stormtrooper recruits long after most clones had been retired. The job quickly shaped Cody into a cynic. He found most of the newbies to be incompetent and whiny, resentful of having to do run-of-the-mill patrols and simple drills. They were vastly inferior to the clones he had once commanded, and he rarely hesitated to say as much. These opinions were all widely held among retired clones, including in canon, and as most Star Wars fans could tell you, it's simply common fact that recruited stormtroopers were a step down from clone troopers. Let's take a quick look at those recruits. Shortly after the dawn of the Empire, regular humans began to be recruited into the ranks of the Stormtrooper Corps, training in academies on worlds like Kamino and Corida. The requirements for entry were punishing. Recruits had to be of a very narrow height and weight range, and needed to rank high in tests that measured their agility and strength. Those who were accepted were subjected to a merciless barrage of training drills, which pushed them to their very limits, weeding out the weak. In this, the academy instructors hoped to shape the recruits into effective replacements for the clone troopers, at least in terms of skill and physical traits. That was the first reason that clones hated their replacements. Recruits weren't as good as clones, mainly because they had lives beyond combat. Clones existed for a single purpose: to fight and die for a major galactic power, Republic or Empire. They trained from birth and were explicitly engineered to be soldiers. Recruits, by their very nature, were not. Thus, they could never compete with clones that were as comprehensively skilled as the Kaminoans, no matter what the Academy instructors tried. Just as droid programming was no match for a decade's worth of hard-earned skill, a few months of training wasn't either. Of course, this didn't bother the Empire nearly as much as it bothered the clones. Even though they were a downgrade, stormtroopers were still effective as far as combat skill was concerned. They could still serve the Empire's purposes, quelling poorly armed rebel groups and serving as an ever-present reminder of Imperial might. Since they were also much cheaper than clones were, this ended up being a net positive in the minds of the Imperial commanders, at least at first. The Empire didn't need an army of super soldiers anymore, or so they thought. Additionally, Imperial officers saw something else in recruited soldiers that they believed made them far more useful than clones: loyalty. As was mentioned in this past Bad Batch episode, the Empire was doubtful about where its clones' loyalties lay. Some Imperial bureaucrats figured that human recruits would be much more loyal, as they would have volunteered to fight for the Empire.
The loyalty of those who willingly enlist is what I see tremendous value in.
Of course, this only makes sense on paper. As we saw again in this week's Bad Batch episode, these recruits were only loyal to a point. Humans who were loyal to the Empire, by and large, were loyal because they had been brainwashed. Most didn't even see the Empire for the fascist state it was, believing that it represented freedom, real freedom as opposed to anarchy, chaos, and separatism. The Empire largely achieved this by keeping its people ignorant of its many atrocities, neglecting to mention what the full duties of its soldiers entailed. However, that's not a facade they could maintain for the soldiers actually going out and committing these crimes. Inevitably, stormtrooper recruits would quickly see what the Empire really was, and then that carefully manufactured loyalty would vanish. We saw this in the Bad Batch on Onderon, and we also saw the Empire's solution to it. When the Empire realized the obvious, that its loyal recruits suddenly stopped being loyal when told to commit war crimes, they looked to the Tarkin doctrine for a quick fix. Fear would be used to maintain loyalty, fear of merciless commanders and of fellow stormtroopers looking for a promotion. That prevented mass defections, but it was a problem the Empire could have avoided altogether. Aside from the other obvious solution of just not doing unspeakable crimes, the Empire could have just kept the clones. After all, clones were more than willing to commit war crimes, especially after Order 66. Their inhibitor chips made it nigh impossible for them to actively disobey orders, and even if that wasn't the case, most clones would still follow any order they were given. This is also something we can glean from last episode's mission to Onderon. The recruits with Crosshair that hesitated to finish the mission did so because they were wary about killing people they clearly recognized as civilians. Crosshair, however, made no distinction, and he likely never did. To clones, all non-clones seemed pretty much the same. They were rarely exposed to life outside of the barracks as a matter of necessity, and while they understood the concept of civilians, they saw it more as a technical classification. Innocence wasn't something that mattered to them, and it wasn't even something that many clones understood, as they had never met an innocent before in their lives. It wasn't just that clones were on board with war crimes or whatever, but rather that the concept of war crimes and innocent civilians were foggy ones to many clones because of how they were raised. In Star Wars: The Clone Wars, we got to see the clones' best side. During the war, under the guidance of the Jedi, clones usually strayed away from harming civilians, and even went out of their way to help civilian populations when their generals commanded it. But clones had a darker side as well, one that was put on full display when the Empire was born. Without the Jedi, the darker tendencies of their characters came out much more often. Of course, those tendencies had been there all along. To again reference legends, recall the story of ARC Trooper Alpha 17. In comparison to some of the commanders we might remember from the Clone Wars, Alpha was pretty dark. In his first ever mission during the defense of Kamino, he was prepared to murder millions of developing clones to prevent them from falling into separatist hands. On Jabim, he repeatedly argued for the assassination of all surviving Jabimi political leaders and for the execution of captured Jabimi nationalists. He cared about his orders and Republic victories, nothing more. Civilians were only a concern for him when his orders from the Jedi made them his concern. Alpha wasn't atypical either, and the activation of the inhibitor chips meant that pretty much all clones were like that under the Empire. That was what the Kaminoans had engineered them to be like, after all. At the end of the day, clones were supposed to be obedient killers, and it was only the influence of the Jedi that tempered their more brutal inclinations during the Clone Wars. Ironically, this made them exactly what the Empire needed. Unlike recruits, most clones didn't need to be brainwashed to support the Empire unquestioningly. They just needed their chips to keep working. As long as that voice in the back of their heads whispered that good soldiers follow orders, they'd kill however many civilians their superiors wanted them to kill. That was the other reason why clones hated their successors. They thought they were too soft. Clones like Crosshair saw the hesitance of their new subordinates and saw it as a pathetic lack of resolve. So, that's why clones hated their natural-born successors in the Stormtrooper Corps. But what do you think? Are you guys liking the Bad Batch so far? In our opinion, it's the gritty dark times show that we've always wanted, and we're super stoked to see more of it. So let us know your current thoughts and more in the comment section below. As always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.